Hello and welcome to this episode of the Be Free podcast. And we've got a bit of an interesting spin today on our podcast. I'm really absolutely so excited and so delighted to be back and sharing my beautiful friend Oran with you all. And Oran and I met a few years ago when I chose to study flower essences, and she was my incredible teacher and guide. And from there, we've become friends, done some little behind the scenes creative projects, and now I'm here sharing her magic and wisdom as a musician with you. So, do you want to do your little intro, Oren, as to who you are and all that jazz?
Yes, I think this is where I forget my own name. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm Oran and I'm Susie's friend, and I'm a mum to three kids. I've got a teenager, primary school lad, and a preschool lad. I'm a wife, I'm a woman, and I'm just entering back into a journey of being an artist.
Mm.
And that began for me when I was 13 and got my first harp. I'd seen different people playing harp on stage and I'd heard the harp, and this was just like an instrument that I was just totally drawn to. I wanted to touch it, I wanted to feel it. And when I was 13 and got my first harp, it was very natural to start writing songs because I'd always been writing in a journal. I've always written a diary. I love writing. I'd done some kind of poems, but as soon as I got my harp, I just began singing, and singing my own songs was like supernatural. So I'm just returning to that. I'm 40, just had my big 40th. And so, yeah, I'm on like a new adventure. And we're going to talk a little bit about that because I hope that my adventure will inspire other people, women, mothers, people in the maybe middle stage of your life where you think, oh, can I make a change? Or can I actually go back? Or can I do
Mm.
something different? So I'm hoping that this journey being inspiring for me is maybe inspiring for other people. Yeah.
Yeah, and it absolutely is. It's inspiring me, and I'm loving seeing this like new iteration of you thriving because Oren is also an incredibly successful businesswoman and has won Businesswoman of the Year. So it's really beautiful to see you kind of embracing that inner child that loved the harp that's now coming back to share that. And I say inner child, but you were like a session musician, and I know creativity has been such a huge part of your life. You chose to study that, didn't you, at university as well? So what was it you studied again? I was trying to remember today because it's very
Yeah.
related, isn't it?
Yeah. So I studied popular music performance, which back in my time, it was quite rare to do in the UK. You basically either did classical or opera, or you did musical theatre. And my whole drive was about writing songs and composing. And so I found a course in London at the time, which was super hard to get onto. And I got one out of 10 places, and that was, yeah, like a real big life adventure. I was born in Australia, but my mum moved to a small fishing village called Fintorn where I grew up. So it was a big adventure to then move to London and go into writing, and that was kind of in my 20s. And then life happened, and my whole life kind of was a bit of a roller coaster. And I think maybe many of us like lose a little bit of that initial passion that we start out with as a child
Mm.
because life happens. And so, yeah, so this journey is a little bit about finding my way back to myself.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. And I know obviously a little bit about your background, but you've kind of mentally, emotionally, spiritually, I know creativity, not just music, but creativity is a huge part of your own tools and your toolkit and for healing and um yeah, do you want to share a little bit about that? Like your, I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
beliefs
yeah,
around
yeah.
creativity or how you use that as a support tool?
I think creativity is super underestimated in terms of healing and also in terms of living an authentic life, which is what I'm super interested in, both of those things. So, my mother created the Fintorn flower essences, and I grew up first in Australia using Australian bush essences, then using my mum's Vinton flower essences. And one of the things that she always used to talk about with people when they came really having a big healing crisis or having a big, a breakdown or a big grief in their life, one of the main questions she used to ask was, what is it that really brings you joy? Like the thing that you just do that you love. And she always used this as the kind of key question for dowsing and finding essences. And she was also a homeopath working with treatment. But it always fascinated me because when she would tell me, oh, I saw this person and they told me they were amazing ballet dancer and they haven't done it for 20 years. And then she would fast forward and I'd get the update and she'd go, do you know she started, maybe not ballet, but she's doing ballroom
Yeah.
lessons with her husband, and she's actually looking forward to lessons or whatever it is. I think we all have something that we can do that just takes us into another state. And I think often the reality is when life gets hard, we have a drink or we have a smoke or, we get sexy time with someone we don't really love. And we kind of go and do all these things that are trying to fill that feeling of getting a bit out of it. And I think on the flip side, mindfulness, we do that in embodied movement. And so anything that's creative, I think, has the ability to get us a little bit out of ourselves and into that connection. And so that feeling of like, I have a spirit, I am a spirited being. Are we surrounded by other spirits? And what is it in between? And I think often our pain is all the personal stuff. It's the human stuff. It's the really hard stuff that's happened or that is happening. And I think the creativity, that creative process allows us to get into that wider space of being where it's not about being Oran or mum or whoever it is that we think that we are, because we're also just a spirit. And so, yeah, I'm super fascinated about that. And I feel like inspired to share that and encourage people to remember. And maybe someone doesn't even remember what is that thing that I love doing that's creative. And then it's like a journey to find what that is. And I think it's different for each person, very different. Some people love being physically tactile. For others, like for me, the songwriting is quite mental. It's like I'm playing with words, I'm hearing sounds, so it's like an audios, it's like a puzzle. So I kind of just go out into this other creative space. But I have a friend who loves dancing, and so for her it has to be a really physical movement thing. So I think it is different strokes for different folks. Like, yeah, but it, yeah.
Finding your creative creative groove. And I was lucky enough to have a little sneaky listen of your single that is coming out on May the 1st, which is called Set Free. And I absolutely loved it. I loved the video. I loved like the start of it. I found it like a little bit haunting, and then so like I couldn't get it out of my head. And I just wondered, like I know you've mentioned you obviously use the songwriting as kind of a tool to kind of support yourself, but what was the inspiration behind that particular song?
Yeah, Set Free is, I mean, it links very closely to my PTSD journey. And on that journey of recovery, I basically chose to wake up every day and songwrite, or at least write words, as a way of basically getting myself out of bed. I was in a really dark place where I couldn't find that inspiration. I couldn't find that energy that keeps you going. I was completely fatigued. So one of the early songs that came was Set Free. And the spirit of Set Free was me playing with the idea is like, how can I set myself free out of feeling really hopeless? And for me, it was a really strange experience having PTSD and feeling so low and really kind of hitting rock bottom, because like I've always been a very positive person. I've had a lot of tools to my kit. You know, I grew up with my mum who was very into all of the things that can help, from meditation to wild swimming to, you know, I had a lot of tools. So it was really shocking to get to a point of feeling like nothing is working.
Yeah.
And it was mainly because I was having, and a bit going back to the embodied experience, I was having a really physical reaction for the first time in my life, which I now know was like a really healthy process.
Mhm.
But I think, yeah, I had various traumas in my childhood basically that have kind of triggered this complex PTSD that I hadn't really dealt with in a physical way.
Mhm.
So what happened is suddenly, and I know you know all about anxiety and you've had your own journey, and I think many of us have. So I've always had panic attacks since I was a child, since I was a teenager, and that was a kind of physical thing, but it never went more than that. So when I turned 40 and I had a really traumatic life event, it triggered this kind of embodied experience. So, blah, blah, blah. Set free is really my journey into questioning how is it that we can set ourselves free when we're so low or so broken or so down. And maybe you heard, like on the video, it plays with this idea of trying to find through the people around us that are there, that are, you know, our friends, our partners, our children, whoever it might be that's on the path at that time, that actually is a bit of a mirror and reminds you, you know, like, oh, there's a line that says, be my brother, be my sister. And it's like, sometimes I think in those low moments, it's the people around us that remind us who we are. And I
Mm.
definitely needed that to set myself free. I needed a little bit of like comfort. I needed to hear from other people, like, you're needed, you're important, I see you, because I was so lost. And then it kind of turns it around and is like, how can you set yourself free?
Mhm.
What are the things that we need to ask for, or the things that we need to do? So yeah, it's that setting yourself free from inside. And I think sometimes we think we need to make a big life change, and
Mhm.
actually sometimes it's the really small things, like the change in how you wake up every day, or the change in who you don't spend time with,
Yeah.
yeah, or the things that you really value. So yeah, there's a big kind of play on how we set ourselves free, and the process to that. Yeah,
Mhm.
questioning it.
Thank you so much for sharing and sharing so candidly, because I think, a lot of people may have this perception of, if you grow up in this environment of, a lovely little fishing village and your mum works with flower essences, and, I know you had an incredible education, which was creative, and you spent a lot of time outdoors, that like you should be okay.
Mhm.
You have all the tools, yeah? And
Mhm.
I know I can, like, not empathize with what you've been through, but just to the point of when I, a couple of before I started doing my essences course, was in a similar position. I was in such a dark place. I had all the tools. Yeah, I couldn't find my way out of that. I was like, and you feel like you're failing because you're like, well,
Mhm.
I should be able to do this. Right. So I think it's really valuable that you shared, that your experience of PTSD and how that has, shown up in later life,
Mhm.
for anyone that's listening,
Mhm.
that can maybe relate to that. Because I still think, although these things are more talked about, there still can feel quite a lot of shame, and yeah, and that obviously hampers the healing.
I totally agree. And I think definitely the shame. And I think there's also something. So, like, I grew up in a culture which is like, we should be so grateful for. So, I went to a Steiner school, and every day we did a morning verse, and it was like, thank you for the sun for shining. Thank you that I'm so blessed. So, I grew up with a lot of positivity and a lot of gratitude. And actually, when I hit a hard time, part of the story I was running is like, well, I don't really have a hard time because I've got a beautiful husband, I've got beautiful kids, I'm lucky because I've got a business, like, I'm not starving. So it's like, I think we run these stories where we can kind of talk ourselves out of the reality of, I don't feel well right now, I'm not
Mm.
coping, I need some help, I'm also just a person, and I think that that's really, really hard to take all of the layers off. And
Mm-hmm.
my husband joked with me because one night I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like, I just can't cope. And he said, you're like a lobster. You're just like a lobster. It's okay. And whenever I have had a wobble recently, it's like, just remember, you're still getting the shell back on, And I feel like it was so shocking to get to this point. But now I'm like, a butterfly, and my
Mm-hmm.
logo with my music is a dragonfly, and it's like we all have these tests in our life, and I think we all have these healing journeys to get back to the heart of our purpose. Like, why are we here? Why are we living a human life? Because we are human, we do break and we do have pain. And for me, I lost both my parents when I was very young, and so I don't have grandparents for my 3 children. That means I don't have childcare for them. There's a whole ripple effect of
Mm-hmm.
there's not a support system. I grew up in a community. That community is no longer. So, it's like sometimes we can feel like we don't have the right. That's my
Yeah.
experience. Like, I don't have the right to be sad or hurt or stop. And
Mm-hmm.
that was also the lesson, which I'm passionate about talking about, is like sometimes we need to stop. And
Yeah.
that's the hardest decision, or was for me. And also, I've heard when I've done flower essences with other people, it's like so hard to say, how do we actually have a pause in our life and say, I need a rest, I need a break here.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard, especially if you're spinning all those plates.
Yeah, and I think, well, had I not taken that, call it a little sacred pause, had I not taken that pause, we would have never met, because it was during that time that our paths crossed as well, when I kind of just stopped and needed life just to stop to figure things out and focus on myself and my own healing. And yeah, and so much positive things have come out of that depths of pretty dark dark spaces, but yeah, coming out that other side. So from your experience of PTSD, like, I don't know, is there anything valuable you think that you could share? Like, I know, like, obviously, we're not being kind of clinicians here, although you do have like a bit of a background in that, but from your experience with PTSD, is there anything that you could share that might support people?
Yeah, so one thing that really helped me, that totally surprised me, was ringing a free helpline phone number. And I really talk about that a lot with anyone that I meet with anxiety or PTSD, because in the beginning of my journey, I really was not ready to talk to friends or family about it. I actually didn't tell my husband for quite a few weeks
Mhm.
because I thought, I'm going to figure this out on my own. And in that kind of figuring it out, it was actually figuring out I needed more help. I thought I was going to try and fix it on my own, and I'm a bit like that. But anyway, 3 times I phoned Samaritans. We have Mikey's line in Scotland. I don't know if you have international listeners, but phoning a free helpline really helped me, because it's someone I don't know. I could be 100% honest, and I could really unravel it. When you tell your partner or a friend, I almost felt like, am I going to overwhelm them? Are they going to be
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like Oran's not okay? So I found that super valuable. I felt a bit guilty using the service and the line, but then I'm like, no, it's okay. I help lots of other people in other ways.
Mhm.
And then the other thing was, for me, because I come from a holistic background, it was super unusual to go to my GP. So
Mm.
like that for me was an unusual step, but it
Yeah.
actually was super helpful, because I was given the option, like, do I need some medication, or do I need, yeah, for me, it wasn't that option, wasn't my choice, but I had it. And that also relieved me to know that it was an option,
Mhm.
actually put everything a little bit slightly more at rest. Um, and I think also, so I went into like psychotherapy and a trauma therapy, which really, really helped. But the other thing that helped was I actually, I don't know if this is good advice, but I didn't share it with anyone at the beginning. I kind of kept everything really small and just with a few people. And in the beginning of PTSD, maybe it's similar with really high anxiety or anxiety disorder, things can feel so overwhelming that even someone knowing and asking you can be too much.
Yeah.
I actually was trying to cancel out the noise and
Mhm.
really cherry picking the real trusted people to say, just so you know, I'm not doing okay. And it felt nice that some people knew that, and it felt such a relief that lots of other people didn't,
Yeah.
because I couldn't really I didn't want to email or a text or like, are you okay? It was too
Mhm.
much, because I
Mhm.
wasn't. What am I going to say for many weeks? I'm not okay, and I'm not
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I know. I know that, and that feels horrible as well, doesn't it? People do ask you, you're okay, and you're like, well, actually,
Yeah,
since you asked,
yeah,
yeah, like they really probably don't want. Yeah,
yeah.
there's certain people who will be there and want to be there and want to hear it, and then others, as you say, yeah, it's like,
And also, I think part of like my kind of, I guess, some breakdown, whatever it was, dark night of the soul, all of that stuff, the healing
mm,
journey, that was also like really coming true to myself of what was going on. I think the reality is, like, my mum had died. I was running a business. I had 3 children. I'd gone a little bit on overdrive. I was doing things I loved, but it was just a bit too much, and I was on a coping. So part of the like pause or the breakdown was like, I'm not coping, so it's not going to be helpful for me to interact with someone that wants to go, hi, how are you? And me go, I'm fine, because I'm not fine. So I needed to kind of create a space where I told the people who were in my life and
yeah,
were around me, like, just so you know, I'm not fine right now. So, like, even with my children, I was very open with saying, you're going to see me crying a lot. You know, mummy's okay, but I am sad at the moment. And I made the excuse that I miss my mum. It was a way for them to understand. You know, I didn't
yeah,
go into I've got PTSD, but it was just a way to say, like, yeah, you're going to notice that I'm sad. And I needed to bring them on the journey and not hide it from them. And
mm.
they were fine. Like, they would even joke, like, I would watch Bluey, the cartoon, with my 4-year-old, and something sweet would happen. It was always happy things. And, oh, and he's like, it's okay, mummy, because it's really happy. And I'm like, I know. And he goes, I know, you just like crying. So he kind of like crying. And it was just, it's like a bit, I don't know, like when you're pregnant, you cry at the news. So it was just like a kind of a massive release. And so I needed to be in a little womb cocoon where that was okay. And I guess some people maybe take a medication if you don't have the space where that would be
Yeah.
okay. And I totally understand that, because I really had to ask myself, am I really willing to go to this place with my husband and my kids
Mhm.
and be that kind of lobster with the shell off? So for me, it was safe. I had a husband super present. The children knew he's around and it's safe. But I can imagine if you're in a situation where you don't have that and you don't have the support, I certainly would have been taking the medication as well and finding
Mhm.
support in other places. So it's super hard when you're not coping. And
Yeah, and I think the word that you've highlighted there is safety. Yeah, creating that safe space, whatever that may look like for you, with whoever that may look like for you, in order for you to begin to process.
And
I
I
know.
think often it's not your family. Like for me, it
Mhm.
was my husband, but I was married before. I have an ex-husband as well, and nothing around him. But in that situation, in our life at that time, in the lives that we led, in the way that our marriage functioned, that certainly would not have been on offer or available, or the place in which I would have been able to do that. So, I imagine myself in that time, it would have looked very different. It would have been taking the medication, it would have been my counselor, my therapist being that person, and hopefully a friend. Hopefully, people can find a friend to confide in. Yeah.
Amazing. And I love how you're utilizing your music as the
Yeah.
support and as a process. And I think there's so many different ways that people can support themselves, but that's why I thought it was really interesting for us to have this conversation today, because both you and I have access to probably all your standard and alternative forms of healing. But for you, the music has really been a big part of that. Do you want to share a little bit about the music as a healing modality?
Yeah, I love to. So, like, for me, that I didn't set out to write an album or relaunch as an artist. It really was a waking up every day, and it moved from journal writing, which has always been a kind of healing practice for me, into songs coming. And so at first I kind of was sharing in my weekly therapy, like, oh, I'm writing songs again. And I said, but I don't want to sing how I used to sing. I don't want to play how I used to play. I feel like there's something new coming. And she was really encouraging me, like, what if you made a piece of music or an art piece of sound that you didn't feel like someone's going to judge you? So you're not making it for a listener or for a person. And I was like, well, that feels really free. That feels like super exciting, because I hadn't written actually for about 10 years. I hadn't really been
Okay.
songwriting after years of doing it every day. So that was the kind of key that got me into, like, oh, well, if I'm just doing it for pleasure or for sorting out my own head and emotions, then it feels really exciting. And basically, I got, 30 songs into a songwriting process.
Wow.
And I was like, I'm writing an album. I've totally written a music album. I don't know if anyone wants it or wants to listen to it, but I feel like these songs are raw and real. And if I've been on this journey, how many other people have been on a journey where they feel lost, where they feel down, where they feel pissed off, where they feel angry, where they feel like questioning, what's life about? So suddenly I realized, like, I was writing an album and I was making a piece that then I got to a place of wanting to share and wanting to be like, hey, I am here, and like I'm still healing, but I'm here and I'm making these songs.
Mhm.
And so I kind of joyfully, playfully contacted a lot of the people that I used to be in the music industry with, and said, do you want to play, or would you like to produce? And it all just kind of, talking about manifestation, you and I had that chat before we came on live, was something started to manifest and other people got involved, and I was like, wow, this is like, it was not a planned thing, but it feels like a real great organic thing. And actually it's kind of taken its own space in my life, and it's been the thing that's got me out of where I felt stuck and into a place of going, oh, let's explore. There's still more life to explore. Yeah, I'm 40. Yeah, I've got 3 kids. Yeah, I've got a business, but I still have time and I still have space to explore. And I hope, like, when people hear the songs, that there's that feeling of like a search for freedom. And I think
Yeah.
that's the journey I'm on. Search for freedom.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love this new version of you. And I think, the more people that can hear that we are a lot, like, we're supposed to change and evolve, right? We're not supposed to remain. And I know that you, like, through your essences, have worked a lot with people with the depression and anxiety and things as well. And from my experience, it's because we get so stuck trying to be this person that we once were, and not allowing ourselves to evolve and to do the things like you mentioned that bring us joy and the things that we love. So I love for people listening to almost have this permission to, like, I mean, what you're doing is like wild in some people's eyes, like, oh my gosh, she's like businesswoman of the year and now she's like gigging at Belgium. Hello.
What you said is also like, you said sometimes we're trying to be this thing. It's like also sometimes we're trying to be this one person. And it's like,
Mm.
wait a minute, I'm totally multidimensional. Like, I'm a really gentle, loving, quiet mum, but I'm also like a passionate lover. And I'm also a songwriter. And yeah, I love doing business and like having creative ideas. So it's also like, I think we can get in a groove where we've almost labeled ourselves. And like this
Mm.
song, Set Free, is totally that. It's like, we can have many different parts of ourselves. So Oran is like the playful, fun, childlike, wild, explorative part of myself that
Mhm.
I'm setting free through my music. And of course there's other times where I'm quiet and I'm doing my business, or I'm doing my dishes with my kids and I'm super gentle, chilled out mama. So it's like bringing, for me, like Oran is the fire, is the passion, is the, yeah. And so I hope that Oran music and me gigging and the journey is like, that's a bit of the message, is like, who is that for you, and that we can be all of these things, maybe not all at once, because I keep
Yeah.
reminding myself, I'm like, oh, I'm tired.
Yeah.
Maybe not all at once, but there's space, there's time, like, yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, yeah, allowing these opportunities to come in, right? And just saying yes, like, and you should say doing the things that really drive you. So obviously the music like gives you this sense of expansiveness and freedom, and your new song is called Set Free. What other areas of your life do you find that
Mm.
sensation of freedom?
So for me, nature is massive. I grew up, firstly in Australia, and so I had that kind of that wilderness, and then moved here to Fintorn, and I live in Moray still. So going to the sea, going to the river. I love hearing the trees and the birds. That's where I often go to songwrite. It's where I often go to be. Actually, if I want quality time with my children, I'll usually suggest a walk. So for me, like nature or bathing in nature, being in nature is a massive healing tool. And actually, in the beginning of PTSD, before the music, the only thing that I could really do was go for a walk in nature alone. That was kind of the only thing, aside from being in my home and being in my room, that that I could manage. And so I think nature can wake us up. And also, I think we're so out of touch with the seasons. I wore my May crown because
I
we're in
love it.
the May season, and Set Free is coming out in May in Beltane with all of that beautiful energy. But I think also when we walk in nature, wherever we live, even if it's the middle of a city and we connect with one tree in a park in the middle of the city, when we walk in nature, we're reminded of the seasons. And somewhere in our spirit, we kind of go like, oh my God, yes, it is autumn. Of course, everything's falling down. Of course, all the trees are losing their leaves. And I think in the same in winter, we kind of forget that we're meant to hibernate. We're not meant to be rushing around busy in the winter. We're meant to be writing and taking stock and sleeping and resting. And so I think nature, being in nature, has its own power, but it also kind of dips us into the cycles that we so often in modern day forget that we are such a part of. Moon cycles is like a whole nother topic that many of us now journey into. But yeah, I think those cycles of nature remind us that we're on a rhythm. We are on an annual rhythm, we're on a monthly rhythm. And then if we think about the daily rhythm, we get energy when the morning wakes up, and then it starts to go down. And when we're doing anything that's opposite to that, we're getting in a muddle. And how many of us wake up, it's like, wait, the sun's not even up in Scotland, it's still dark, at that time, and I've already done my to-do list, like something's wrong here. So
absolutely. I love that. And I think it's something that's so accessible for, those that are listening, that to do that. And I know that was a huge support for me as well. And yeah, that it's available to everyone. It doesn't cost you a thing just to get outside and just.
Another top tip you reminded me about not costing anything and doing is non-stop writing. So I think sometimes people think like I need to be good at writing. No. So like my favorite writing is non-stop, no capitals, no grammar, any letters, no spelling, like literally everything goes out the window. You don't even need spaces. And it's just that outpouring. And I think that's a great thing, almost at the time that you might need to pick up the phone and phone someone for help, is actually that you can write it all. Because sometimes you start to answer your own questions. So non-stop writing and doing that in nature as well, it can be really powerful. Going to a quiet space, looking at something in nature, and just getting a little bit out of whatever you're in that moment can be just another focus.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. After this,
You want to do it? You were looking.
I'm looking out my window like, see ya. I'm out of here. Me and my journal.
Myself.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much. So I just wanted to share some of the gigs that you had coming up, because you've got a huge number of different gigs coming up.
And also to anyone listening, I am so new in returning to music scene. I have like 100 little followers. So be my follower, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook, on my TikTok. Please come to a gig. I want to meet you. I want to sign a CD. Like I so want to have new people. Come.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will share all of Oran's links with you, so you can go and check them out. You can check out her what was your first single called again?
Falsely Faithful.
Falsely Faithful. Yes. So I can share the link to that in your YouTube channel, so people can give you a follow. They can see when everything's coming out. But
Oran my second single, and then the album's out in September, just so you all know.
Okay. Cool. Celebrating.
I interrupted you. You're on a roll.
Yeah, so Oran is going to be playing at the Universal Hall in Findhorn on the 28th of June. Eden Court Summer Festival, 6th of July. 25th of July, Tartan Heart Festival, Bella Drum, whoop, whoop, at the Heart Stage. Love it. So perfect. Edinburgh Festival,
Yes,
check you
I'm
out.
part of the free fringe, so you don't even need to pay to come and see me. You can come have a chat with your friends and have a nice drink and chill out.
That is so cool. And then in September, the album launch at Findhorn Bay. And I'm sure that between now and then, there'll probably be other things getting added along the way as these singles come out and your offerings are shared with the world. And yeah, so I will share everything with all my listeners, watchers, everyone, so they can come find you. But yeah, is there anything else you want to add before we hop off our conversation today? Because I feel like, we could come back and we could chat essences. We could come back and chat cyclical living. We could come back and just chat mum
I
business life.
I think maybe it's a little bit heavy to end on, but I think that many people right now are not coping so well. I think it's
Mm,
a hard time. I think we've all gone through like the big COVID, the big lockdown. We're going into more phases of more technology, more disconnection. So I guess like my message is if you're struggling to reach out and just ask someone for help, and then also just finding the right people to have around you. Because for me, it was a little bit, I had to make everything a bit less.
yeah.
So that's probably my message is like
Mhm.
really finding those right people that you know are the ones that can trust and remind you who you are, and then asking for help if you need it. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your wisdom and yeah, sharing that, for people to kind of create that little inner circle. And as you mentioned earlier, it doesn't necessarily have to be family. I know there's such a, uprising. Well, you mentioned chat, like a phone line there, or there's so many kind of like women's circles, things like that now where we can speak really candidly and vulnerably and not be judged and just be held. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Susie.
Cool. So we will be celebrating you on your new single. And I will look forward to catching up with you soon.
Yes, come hug me at a gig.
Oh yes, that sounds like an ace plan. Okay, road trip. I'll see you
Okay.
soon.